Hi, welcome to the channel. So today I'm reacting to a video from Today I Found Out. This is the story of one of India's most legendary commandos. He's on the same level as Roy Benavides and Sir Adrian Carton de Villart, the unkillable soldier. This is that time a soldier was awarded a posthumous medal while still alive. Let's get to it.
Just before we get started with this one, I do want to say that there are a lot of weird pronunciations, or not weird, just they're in a language that is not mine and a language I don't know. I look them up when I can. If I screw them up, you can have a go at me in the comments. Feel free. So, the Param Vir Chakra, which roughly means Wheel of the Ultimate Brave, is India's highest military decoration for gallantry during battle and is awarded for rarest of the rare gallantry, which is beyond the call of duty and which in normal life is considered impossible to do. The medal is known for having one of the most stringent selection processes of any military award in the world, and 14 of the total 24 recipients were killed during the action that earned it.
The PVC is India's equivalent of the United States Medal of Honor or Great Britain's Victoria Cross. However, as he said, it is much more difficult to attain. For perspective, there have been about 3,500 medals of honor since it was established, I think, in 1861, with about 40% of those awards earned during the Civil War. Since about 1856, there's been about 1,400 Victoria Crosses. The PVC is a younger medal. It was first established in 1947, once India was actually given its independence from Great Britain. With that being said, under British rule from 1857 to 1947, Indians were actually a part of the Royal Indian Military, in which they actually received over 150 Victoria Crosses.
One such posthumous recipient was Yogendra Singh Yadav. The problem was that Yadav was very much alive and he heard about his own heroic death while recovering in the hospital. Born in 1980 in the village of Aurangabad here, the son of a former soldier who'd fought in the Indo-Pakistan Wars as part of the Commandos regiment, Yadav, along with his brothers, would frequently spend evenings listening to their father's war stories and tales of famous Indian military heroes. This instilled a deep sense of patriotism and duty in Yadav from a young age, so it was no surprise to his family when he decided to join the military at just 16 years old, joining the Grenadier Regiment. Yadav subsequently proved to be a formidable asset to the military, quickly rising through the ranks, eventually coming to serve with an elite commando unit of the 18th Grenadiers called the Ghataks, basically elite shock troops tasked with being the first boots on the ground in any conflict.
A ghatak platoon is present in every single infantry battalion in the Indian Army. They are equivalent to maybe a U.S. Marine Scout Sniper platoon or the U.S. Army Rangers. If you do want to see just how brutal their training is, I will go ahead and link a video at the very end.
On May 3rd, 1999, Kashmiri and Pakistani militants managed to storm and take control of several strategic forts and bunkers along the border that had been left abandoned since the end of the war. This action prompted the start of what became known as the Kargil conflict, a series of bloody confrontations between the two countries that lasted for over 3 months.
It's actually the Kargil War.
One of the most strategically valuable points captured was a group of fortified hardpoints atop a 17,411 foot, that's 5,307 meters tall mountain, known colloquially as Tiger Hill, or officially as Point 4660. As the tallest peak in the Kargil region, Tiger Hill allowed the enemy soldiers to look down on the 56th Brigade's headquarters, as well as watch the Srinagar-Leh highway for troop and supply movements. Unsurprisingly, the top Indian military brass demanded its immediate recapture at any cost, and this is where Yadav's commando platoon, the 18th Grenadiers, enters the picture. The mission of the 18th Grenadiers, which has been called one of the most brazen ever attempted in open combat, was to scale an icy 1,000-foot near vertical section of the mountain and assault the 3 fortified bunkers atop it, while artillery bombardments distracted the combined Pakistani-Kashmiri forces stationed in them.
At first, hearing the story, I wanted to compare it to the U.S. Army Rangers scaling the cliffs at Point du Hoc during the Normandy D-Day invasion. However, that is a really bad comparison because at Point du Hoc, the Rangers only had to scale a 100-foot cliff during the daytime on sea level, whereas these guys actually scaled a 1,000-foot cliff thousands of feet above sea level in the freezing cold and the dark. Big difference.
Yadav, who was just 19 years old at this point, wasted no time volunteering to climb the snow-covered peak unassisted and lead the assault. Yadav's mission was to affix ropes to specific areas so the rest of the near couple dozen 18th Grenadier Squad could follow him more quickly. Trained in both mountaineering and alpine warfare, Yadav was an exceptional climber and was reportedly able to scale half that section of the mountain in mere minutes, a feat that becomes all the more impressive when you realize this assault began at night, roughly 11 p.m. local time, and the elevation in that area is approximately 17,000 feet. That's 5,100 meters, meaning light and oxygen levels wouldn't exactly have been ideal for such fast climbing. Unfortunately for Yadav, as he was closing in on the top of the mountain, with his platoon now following closely behind, he was spotted and the enemy opened fire with machine guns and rocket launchers. The initial volley killed Yadav's commanding officer, along with a few others of his squad, all of whom were either killed outright or fell to their deaths. Clinging both metaphorically and quite literally to life, Yadav sustained 3 significant injuries while pushing himself to climb the rest of the way, taking 2 bullets to the shoulder and 1 to his groin in the process. Despite the injuries and being under heavy fire with little cover, he managed to make it to the first bunker.
When he sustained those injuries, he was actually pretty close to the top, about 60 or 70 feet, I think.
Hurling a grenade into it and killing everyone inside, silencing the enemy fire from that position, allowing his squad to continue their ascent. Unfortunately for Yadav, the attention of the second enemy position was now directly on him, and they opened fire on the young man, who was soon joined by 2 of his companions. Yadav then led this trio of death in charging into the storm of bullets and rockets being aimed at them, with Yadav ultimately managing to reach the enemy bunker. In the ensuing hand-to-hand melee in which he used his climbing ice axe as his primary weapon, he killed the 4 Pakistani soldiers who were manning the position. At this point, the surviving members of the 18th Grenadiers reached Yadav and were greeted to the sight of an extremely bloodied and injured young man surrounded by dead enemy soldiers. Remarkably, during his 2 headlong charges, Yadav had sustained a further 12 bullet wounds, 2 hand grenade wounds, and had his arm broken and nearly ripped from its socket by an explosion, leaving it hanging limply at his side. Yadav then shrugged off these injuries, presumably metaphorically, as shrugging would have been extremely painful for him.
How can someone get that injured and still function? I couldn't even imagine. Most likely it was a combination of him being tough, the adrenaline surge, and his patriotic rage that just consumed him.
And he used his belt to make a sling for his arm. Next, he pulled out his pistol and charged the 3rd and final position. Rallied by Yadav's bravery once again in the face of heavy near point-blank fire, the rest of his squad followed and captured the final point. Reports of Yadav's extreme bravery and lack of regard for his own safety in the face of overwhelming opposition soon reached the military brass, and he was immediately recommended for the prestigious Param Vir Chakra at the tender age of just 19 years old. Now, the Param Vir Chakra has one of the most robust selection processes of any medal for heroism in the world, as I already mentioned. This is actually a particular point of pride for the Indian military. The medal isn't just awarded for everyday gallantry, it is awarded for the most conspicuous bravery or some daring or preeminent act of valor or self-sacrifice in the presence of the enemy, whether on land, at sea, or in the air. As such, those eligible for the award are scrutinized at length by no less than 6 different facets of the Indian military hierarchy. To quote, "Recommendation for any gallantry award for a soldier is initiated by the commanding officer of a battalion to the brigade headquarters. From the brigade headquarters, it is passed on after scrutiny to the divisional headquarters, and from there to the corps headquarters. From the corps, after detailed discussion and correlation of the claims, it is sent to the command headquarters, wherefrom it is forwarded to the army headquarters in New Delhi. At the army headquarters, it is finally scrutinized by the Honors and Awards Committee, headed by the Army Chief, which has principal officers such as Military Secretary and Adjutant General as its members. The decision of this committee is forwarded to the Ministry of Defense for its final approval." Needless to say, it was a curious and embarrassing thing that they subsequently awarded this award posthumously, despite the fact that he was lying in a hospital bed at the time. Yes, not only had he sustained a body full of serious injuries, but had made it back down the mountain and to the base hospital. In fact, after the award announcement went out, it was Yadav's young wife who subsequently notified the military brass at the base hospital that her husband was indeed alive and reasonably well, all things considered. It is often claimed that the number of serious injuries Yadav sustained combined with his unbelievable actions were such that it was simply assumed he'd died before making it back to medical aid. However, the selection process for that award is far too rigorous to let such a thing slip normally. What actually happened is that in Yadav's squad there was another soldier with the exact same name, Yogendra Singh Yadav, who did die as a result of the battle. As a result, when the living Yadav was recommended for the Param Vir Chakra, officials attributed the remarkable actions of Yadav to that guy instead, whether because they simply assumed the Yadav who died must be the one who sustained all those injuries and performed the unbelievable act, or simply because nobody noticed there were two Yogendra Singh Yadavs on the squad. This is something that isn't clear. To further confuse things, it's also noteworthy that the other Yadav was among the first to scale the cliff after the surviving Yadav, and that both men engaged the enemy in ferocious hand-to-hand combat. And now for a bonus fact. During an interview from his hospital bed, Yadav was asked to comment on rumours that he was planning on taking an exam to become an officer. Yadav responded that he would like to, but had to pass his high school exams first. Once again, we must mention that he was only 19 years old.
And here's some more bonus facts. He is the youngest recipient of the PVC, and 4 PVCs were actually given to soldiers during the Kargil War. And he did actually become an officer, and on Independence Day a few years ago, the President of India actually made him an honorary captain.
So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that like button below and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching.
I wanted to share something else about his character, but after he retired from the army in 2021, he went on an Indian game show and he donated all his winnings, about 2.5 million rupees, to the Army Welfare Fund. So my utmost respect to him. If you do want to watch a video on the commando training, here you go. Or you can check out a video about another badass.